Hey there, Twisters. So for this video, let's power rank the 10 NHL teams that need to win the 2024 Stanley Cup. So when we're talking about the need to win the Cup, we're talking about how much of a contender that team should be for the upcoming season, their Stanley Cup window to compete for the Cup over the next couple of years, their franchise's historical success, and also what the salary cap looks like for them over the offseason next season. So anyway, let me know in the comments down below, who are your top 3 teams that need to win this upcoming Stanley Cup, and stick around for all sorts of videos and live streams throughout the 2023-24 NHL season. Now, I actually did these power rankings before the start of last year's playoffs, so I'll be sure to draw those comparisons, although this time I'm only doing 10 teams, not the 20 I did a couple weeks before the playoffs started. Now, getting things started at 10th, I've got the Boston Bruins. Now, they were ranked 3rd last year, a franchise-defining year, historical season, but of course they lost Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci, and some other players as well that they had acquired, for example, at the trade deadline. So this roster does look weaker, but you still have great sort of foundation there with Jim Montgomery and his defensive system, with the goaltending, with Charlie McAvoy, and with David Pastrnak, who was a Hart Trophy finalist. This is a great redemption opportunity for them, and they might actually have a lot less pressure on their shoulders from just the hockey world going into this season. And we're talking about the Bruins here, right? It's so weird to imagine them not in the postseason. I still think that even though that division is going to be super competitive with 7 teams vying for a playoff spot, the Bruins should be right in the thick of it. All right, in 9th, I have the Colorado Avalanche, the 2022 Stanley Cup champions. This is still an awesome team, even without Gabriel Landeskog for the full season. In the offseason, I liked how they added Ryan Johansson to give them an option at second-line center, getting Ross Colton, Jonathan Drouin to play with Nathan MacKinnon. They still have a fantastic defensive core with Cale Makar. A lot of these players are in the primes of their career or even younger. I know that Devon Toews is one of those players and will be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season, but the salary cap will rise. So I think the Avalanche still have a decent Stanley Cup window if they can't get it done this upcoming season. But like the Bruins, they are looking to redeem themselves after a disappointing first-round exit to the Seattle Kraken. And last year, because the Avs were the defending champion at that time, I had them ranked 19th out of 20. So now in 8th, I have the Dallas Stars, and they were ranked 7th, and some of you might vault them higher up here. Actually, this is our community's Stanley Cup champion prediction. So we did that on a live stream recently. The West could be theirs this upcoming year. I know the Avs are still a great team. You have the defending champion Golden Knights, a couple other teams we'll talk about. But with the Stars, they have so much firepower and young talent that could even take another step forward this upcoming season. So Jason Robertson, Wyatt Johnston, Ty Dellandrea, Miro Heiskanen's not even in the prime of his career, and he's an exceptional two-way defenseman. Jake Ottinger in goal. He'll be looking to redeem himself after kind of a disappointing playoff performance. And with the weapons the Stars already have, I didn't even mention like Matt Duchene, Joe Pavelski still playing great. There's no reason why this team can't make another deep run and challenge for a Stanley Cup. In 7th, I have the Carolina Hurricanes. I ranked them 11th last time, and maybe I've ranked them even too low here because they have these great regular seasons, and in the postseason, they looked great up until that conference final, and they just got kind of snake bit there by the Florida Panthers in a couple of those games. Now, following this team as closely as I do, I think to myself, what is it going to take with this group, right? They make their defense even stronger in the offseason. They have an overall well-rounded group of forwards, but even so, they've only gone so far when it matters the most. So I kind of think this is a make or break season for them, honestly. The Hurricanes don't want to end up like the Islanders, where they're content with the way that their roster is constructed without that one guy who's going to challenge for 95 or 100 points in a season. So for them, I think that if they can't get it done with the group that they have right now, they might actually have to tear things down a little bit, even though they have some good prospects in their system to come up in the next couple of seasons. Now in 6th, I have the Tampa Bay Lightning. So they actually had a full offseason or something resembling a full offseason. And that's important because this group is an older group of players. Nikita Kucherov is now 30 years old. Steven Stamkos, 33 or 34. Victor Hedman's going to be 33 at the end of the season. So they're only going to get so many more cracks with this great core of players. And the thing is that as a result of that, they don't have the strong prospect pool. They don't have elite talent in the making in their minor leagues, essentially. And the other thing is that their roster isn't as deep as it's been in the past. I do like players like Anthony Cirelli and Nick Paul, but when you really look at those bottom 6 forwards and even at the bottom couple pairings of defensemen, it's not quite the level that it was at when they had, for example, Ryan McDonough and Andre Palat. So I think that lack of depth combined with their age and also Steven Stamkos' future with the Tampa Bay Lightning, this is the reason why I think they need to get it done this year. I think that they're going to be absolutely poised hungry and rested to challenge with some of the other great contenders in the Eastern Conference. And I mentioned Stamkos because he remains unsigned after this upcoming season, and there was definitely some disagreement between him and the front office as to not getting that deal done before the season got underway. All right, so now we're at the halfway point. I have 3 honorable mentions here. The first one, a lot of you are going to think they're the biggest snub on this list. I have the New Jersey Devils, and the reason why they're not in my top 10 is because they're ahead of schedule. They're going to have multiple cracks at the Stanley Cup with just a multitude of players who are either in the primes of their career or haven't even approached that point just yet. You know, Jack Hughes is only, 22 years old. Jesper Bratt's still pretty young. Nico Hischier, Dawson Mercer, Alexander Holtz. I didn't even talk about any defensemen. That's how elite this team could be over the next several seasons. They might have the longest or widest Stanley Cup window in the NHL. The second team I want to talk about are the Los Angeles Kings because they made that big trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois. You're only going to get so much more out of Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty as they get into the back 9 of their career. And the third team I want to mention here are the Washington Capitals. Now, I don't even know if they'll make the playoffs this year. By the way, shout out to our moderators, CJ and Dan, for getting me this beautiful TJ Oshie Reverse Retro 1.0 jersey. But this team has all sorts of age at forward with Ovechkin, Oshie, Carlson, Backstrom, Kuznetsov. All these guys are over 30 years old. John Carlson, right? So they're only going to get so many more cracks at this, and with their salary cap situation, it's not like they can really do much to bolster their roster so much. So now we get into the top 5 for this upcoming regular season. So in 5th, I have the New York Rangers. I ranked them 2nd this past year. And remember, guys, I know that we're fixated on the Devils, but the Rangers were the team that were supposed to make that deep run this past year, and they disappointed, right? They had that lead in that series, and they let it slip. So I think that the pressure is on them, even with a new head coach in Peter Laviolette, to get back into the playoffs and make a deep run. It's not going to be easy, but we're talking about the New York sports market, right? They're still relying on their veterans to lead them in scoring, like Mika Zibanejad, Artemi Panarin, and Chris Kreider. Now, that could change over the next couple of seasons, but you want to really take advantage of what they're able to provide right now, still in the prime of their career. They have great defense. They have an exceptional goaltender in Igor Shesterkin in the prime of his career. So they got to find a way to get it done. You know, the Devils are their big rival. They don't want to see them win another Stanley Cup, whereas the Rangers, we're going on now almost 30 years without a Stanley Cup in the Big Apple. In 4th, I've got another team in that division, and that's the Pittsburgh Penguins. And no guarantees that they even make the playoffs. I know that they have Erik Karlsson on this team right now, so certainly they mean business. But this is a fairly geriatric club with Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Jeff Carter still on the roster, Lars Eller, Chris Letang, and you do have Hall of Famers who are still contributing at a high level. But the thing is that they're eventually going to tail off. I don't know if that's going to be this year, but you want to make the most of them right now, especially while you have still Jake Gensel once he gets healthy, right? He's a former 40-goal scorer. Rickard Rakell is still producing at a very good level for the Penguins. They got Ryan Graves in free agency. They traded for Riley Smith. So really, the Penguins are going all in, and you want to do that before the carriage turns into a pumpkin, essentially. And lastly, as the result of trading for somebody like Erik Karlsson and consuming $10 million over the next 4 years for him, the salary cap situation isn't going to get much easier for Pittsburgh. And last year, I had the Penguins ranked 10th on my list. Now, in 3rd, I have the Toronto Maple Leafs. I ranked them 1st last year, right? And people are always going to argue the Leafs are under the most pressure. I can totally understand that, right? No final appearance since 1967. So I completely get that. But with Toronto, I dropped them a couple of spots because they did manage to lock up Austin Matthews in the offseason. So they've got him for 4 more years. So less pressure there. Of course, they need to figure out what they're doing with William Nylander. But this team has doubled down, right? They're going all in with this core of players for right now. They added Tyler Bertuzzi, Max Domi, John Klingberg, and others in the offseason. So very aggressive. They want to play off around this past year. So I think that the pressure's on them to build off of that. Otherwise, who knows? With how cutthroat of a market that is, Sheldon Keefe's job could be on the line in Toronto. In 2nd, I've got the Florida Panthers. They were ranked 9th this past season. Really, with them, they found lightning in a bottle. But the thing was that started at the end of the regular season. They finally figured it out under Paul Maurice. So essentially, they need to build off of that momentum and find a way to get back into the Stanley Cup final. The thing is that they have veterans who are in the primes of their career right now. Matthew Tkachuk has just kind of entered that window himself, a Hart Trophy finalist. Sasha Barkov, Carter Verhaeghe scored 40 goals. Brandon Montour had a monstrous season last year. I know he's going to start the season injured. Aaron Ekblad is also in that camp. And as you've seen with Bill Zito, this team has swung for the fences the past couple of seasons to go all in to try to win the Stanley Cup with that core of players that they have. The question I have for the Panthers, though, is what are we going to get from their goaltending, right? So Bobrovsky's 35 years old now. He was awesome in the postseason, at least for most of it, but can he play like that in the regular season to get them back into the playoffs? How much will they have to lean on Spencer Knight? Because, last year didn't exactly go his way. And first on my list, they were 4th last year. I've got the Edmonton Oilers. This is the time, man. You've got prime McDavid, you got prime Draisaitl, you've got a very strong supporting cast with Zach Hyman, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins had 100 points. Evander Kane's still producing. Evan Bouchard, we saw just how effective he was last postseason. Matthias Ekholm from the trade deadline. They've got a great roster. The goaltending we can talk about in a separate conversation, but Stuart Skinner did have a strong regular season. Jack Campbell, it's an opportunity for him to redeem himself. No Stanley Cup in Edmonton since 1990. Could they become the first Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup since the Canadiens in 1993? They had a great second half this past season. A lot of people were predicting them to win the Stanley Cup. And right now, they should be the favorite to come out of the West, or at least one of the top 3. The East, I think, is more challenging overall, but the Oilers, it's their time right now with maybe the 2 best players on the planet. So anyway, that's just what I think, guys. What are your top 3 teams that need to win the Stanley Cup this upcoming season? Comment down below and stick around. We're going to have all sorts of videos like this and live streams throughout the regular season. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. I'm Nick. I'll catch you Twisters later. Ciao.